So, Lance, today we're going to be talking about something in the WNBA that we actually have to talk about now after this article got released. So, basically, there is an article that heavily implies that the Indiana Fever knew that Caitlin Clark they weren't going to let Caitlin Clark come back weeks ago. And because they just strung her along, they misled her and said, you know what, we're going to let you train. We're going to let you try to ramp up, even though we're going to rule you out anyway. No matter how close you get, we're going to rule you out anyway. And they were apparently trying to encourage Caitlin to try to come back while also not letting her play. We have to actually talk about this because if the Indiana Fever, it seems like they knew they weren't going to let Caitlin Clark come back. So with knowing you're not going to let Caitlin Clark come back, you realistically know you're probably not going to do anything in the playoffs. So the smart thing would be to tank and get a good draft pick. But I don't believe this front office is incompetent. An incompetent front office gets to the playoffs, guaranteed loses in the guaranteed first round loss, gets to the playoffs, rather than tanking. That's what an incompetent front office does. That's what the Chicago Bulls do. But the Miami Heat, when people are saying the Miami Heat refuse to tank, the Miami Heat sometimes make the playoffs and people think they should tank it and they fuck about and make the finals. So there are some teams that get in as a low seed instead of tanking, but you always give them a puncher's chance, like a Milwaukee, or I'm trying to think, years ago, Boston, when Boston got in on the play-in after making the conference finals the year before. Miami, when they made the finals off the play-in. There's a load of these teams that are on the bubble that you're in the NBA, they have a chance. When the Warriors made it through in the play-in one year, the year the Lakers made it through in the play-in and got to the conference finals. It happens. It happens with teams. So those teams are not necessarily encouraged to tank. But when a team has their own pick and you have the opportunity of a guaranteed playoff loss or tanking, and you choose the guaranteed playoff loss, which they did, you might be saying, oh, but the players can't tank. No. The front office could have made sure this team didn't make the playoffs by taking Serena Sundell instead of Odyssey Sims, from taking Bree Hall instead of Aerial Powers when it happened, for not whatever argument thought Caitlin was going to be back. But realistically, if they're going to shut down Caitlin, they didn't need to take Odyssey Sims. They didn't need to bring in Shea Pay. They didn't need to bring in these players. They could have kept Kyra Lambert, who wasn't good enough. They could have brought in Serena Sundell. They could have brought in Bree Hall as a rotation player and just lost a bunch of those games. They could have lost a bunch of those games and not made the playoffs. A bunch of close games they won and not made the playoffs. And got a top 4 pick or top 5 pick in a 6-person draft. So now, instead of one of AZ Fudd, Gianna Neepkins, instead of one of AZ Fudd, Awafam, or Flaw J. Johnson, who are all seamless fits, they're now in the Garzone, who's basically Katie Lou Samuelson, Gianna Neepkins, who was a super senior, who was going to be a mid-second round pick last year, who is now suddenly near a lottery pick because this draft stinks. After 6, this draft sucks. And I don't even know who's going to be there, but there's not the talent of last year's draft, depth-wise. The top 6, yeah, sure. But they could have gotten a future All-Star, but instead they should be happy. They're going to be happy if they get the next Beck Allen. Like Maddie Westbell 2.0. The next Beck, maybe not Maddie, maybe better than Maddie Westbell, but the next Beck Allen is probably the best case scenario in the draft. Instead of a Flaw J, a generational Awafam, or AZ Fudd, who's just better than them all at that position. So they screwed up that. So I don't think they're incompetent. So by making the playoffs and by shutting down Caitlin Clark, it means that they fully believe that Caitlin Clark is not going to be an asset to this team, and they would rather go into the playoffs with Bree Hall on the roster than with a Caitlin Clark. And I don't know if it's a situation of they would rather do that than go in with Caitlin Clark, and they would rather go in not have the headache of Caitlin Clark. It straight up seems that this front office, whether it be the coach down, they do not want the headache of constant Caitlin Clark questions in the playoffs. They don't want that headache. And I mean this when I say it. that headache gives you a chance of winning a championship. The last time we spoke about a team not wanting the Caitlin Clark headache was the Team USA. Was Team USA last year, and we all said it. We're like, they didn't want the headache of talking about Caitlin Clark, so instead they significantly lowered their chances of winning a championship by not bringing Caitlin Clark. Significantly lowered their chances. They would have a significantly better chance of winning a championship or winning the Olympics with Caitlin Clark than without Caitlin Clark. Just like the Fever have a significantly better chance with a Caitlin Clark who might not be ready for game one, who will be ready for game one, let's be real. I can guarantee you Caitlin Clark is good for 15 minutes tonight. Good for 15 minutes tonight. Good for 15 to 20 minutes in game one of the playoffs. Even if she's not ready for the playoff setting for 40 minutes, cool, play her 15. Because 15 minutes of Caitlin Clark is better than 0 minutes of Caitlin Clark. And then maybe in game 3, you can play her 20. Then in round 2, you can start her and play her 25. And then if they can somehow, because it's best of 5, then by the end of round 2, maybe she's ready to play her 32 minutes a game by the end of round 2. Because at this stage, Caitlin Clark's healed. She was in the ramp-up process. She was ramping up and up and up. You don't ramp up till you're healed. So people are like, oh, Caitlin Clark's injured, she's still injured. No, she was in the ramp-up process. They halted the ramp-up process, which means they didn't want to let her ramp up. The organization said no to her ramping up, which means they don't want her at all. Like teams, we saw 2022 Warriors, Stephen Curry. We've seen so many players ramp up through the playoffs. Like Steph Curry came off the bench in 2022, the year he won Finals MVP, his best playoff run ever. He spent a series coming off the bench. He came off the bench for 5 games. Like, Caitlin significantly increases the chance of the Indiana Fever winning, in our opinion. But clearly, this is an front office that's trying to win, not trying to get good draft picks, not preparing for the future. They're preparing for the now, not the future. And they made a decision in the now that the headache of Caitlin Clark was going to be a negative for the team. Caitlin Clark trying to get back and play is going to harm this team. And Caitlin Clark is in the ramp-up process. She 100% would have been ready for one of the playoff games, even if they get swept. She 1,000,000% would have been ready. But the Fever chose no. And we gotta discuss it, because does the Fever want Caitlin Clark? And I've been saying this all year. I don't think Stephanie White wants Caitlin Clark to play her. I don't think Stephanie White wants Caitlin Clark. I don't think it's a personal issue. I think Stephanie White is trying to turn Caitlin Clark into the Timu Paige Bueckers. She's trying to turn Caitlin Clark into the Timu Paige Bueckers. If you guys don't know what Paige Bueckers, like Paige Bueckers, if Caitlin Clark gets double teamed on a blitz, Caitlin Clark will keep the ball, keep her head up, and try to make a pass to someone who's open. If she sees them overhelping, she's going to try dot the corner. She's going to try make a risky pass. If she sees a player with a seal and there's a 60% chance she succeeds and a 30% chance she doesn't, but if there's a 60% chance that if she succeeds, it's a guaranteed 2 points, she's thinking, okay, yeah, cool. There's a 33% chance of a turnover, but there's a 66% chance of a basket, so 1.3 points per possession on this pass, cool. Whereas Stephanie White sees 1 of every 3 times the turnover number go up, and that's what she cares about. We have a pragmatic coach and a dynamic risk taker as a point guard. Stephanie White, not that she doesn't want Caitlin the person, not that this is a personal thing, not that Stephanie White does not think Caitlin Clark's a good basketball player. Stephanie White wants to turn Caitlin Clark into Timu Paige Bueckers. Stephanie White would rather see Caitlin Clark make the easy pass to a player 3 feet away from her, even if it is Dantas who's shooting 16% from 3, rather than give the ball to Aaliyah Boston for a layup. Or rather than taking a risk. You have a risk-averse coach with a risk-taker as a player. And it's very evident in just the way things are going and the way things have been talked about and the way things have been said with the team. Stephanie White does not want Caitlin Clark in her current form on this team. And I think this is a decision that has been made from the top down, whether it be coaches and front office, is that they shut down Caitlin Clark. I think they think they have a better chance of winning a title without Caitlin Clark than with Caitlin Clark. That's just my theory. I don't think the reason they shut down Caitlin Clark as early as they did has anything to do with long-term risk management. I'm fully convinced the Indiana Fever, if it wasn't for the fact that, she's worth so much money to this team, would be shopping Caitlin Clark in the offseason. I'm fully convinced they would be. Just from everything, and this is not just from this situation, from the start of the season onwards, we've heard Caitlin Clark getting into a shouting match with Stephanie White before the Atlanta Dream second half. And then she comes out in the second half, and apparently, Kelsey Mitchell and Howard got benched because she basically, the rumor is, I know they got into a shouting match, the rumor is that she basically said they want to play a certain style. And in the first half, Caitlin barely touched the ball. It was all Natasha Howard and Kelsey Mitchell. Second half, it was a lineup of Lexi, Sophie, Caitlin, Dantas, and Aaliyah. And they put up 60 and a half. And they went out against the Dallas Wings and put up 60 in the first half. They scored 120 points in 4 quarters. And they had a 60-point half followed by a 60-point half when Caitlin was allowed to run. And then we saw against the Connecticut Sun, when the Sun tried to slow it down a little bit, they stopped running. You've got a coach who doesn't like that style of basketball. And you've got a coach who not only doesn't like that style of basketball, actively believes it's a losing style of basketball. This isn't a knock on Stephanie White, the person. This isn't even saying Stephanie White's a bad basketball coach. But Stephanie White tried to play run and gun in Vanderbilt, and she was the worst coach in the history of Vanderbilt. So to her, if everyone knows a basketball coach, just in life, you base your opinions off your experiences. And her experience is run and gun equals lose. So why would she try to run and gun? That is why she's trying to turn a point guard who is supremely skilled into her point guard. There is so much of a stylistic issue, and this sums it up even more. I don't think they want Caitlin Clark. I actually don't think they want Caitlin Clark, the basketball player. They want Caitlin Clark. They want the money that comes with Caitlin Clark. They want the hype that comes with Caitlin Clark. This organization seems like they want to mold Caitlin Clark into Timu Paige Bueckers. And I don't think Caitlin Clark, if you take the risks out of Caitlin Clark, she's just another player. I mean that. If you take Caitlin's risk-taking, her instincts, and her feel away from her, as in, people always talk about Caitlin being this super, super high IQ player. And I think there's a big difference between different types of IQ. And what people don't understand when they talk about high IQ is some people talk about players with high IQ, meaning they know what's going on, they know what sets teams are running, like a LeBron, like a Rondo. For me, Caitlin Clark is more of she just sees the game different. Her instincts are different. Her ability to process the floor, her ability to process the game, her ability to think 2 passes ahead, know what's going on. That's what separates Caitlin. You've got players that think the game better than what Caitlin thinks the game. Caitlin's feel for the game is different. You can't coach that, but you can coach that out of a player. And I think the Indiana Fever are getting dangerously close. I think they want to coach that out of her. I think they want to coach Caitlin out of Caitlin. And if you coach Caitlin out of Caitlin, not only is she not going to be a draw, she's not going to be that good, because when you take the risks, when you take the risk-taking, when you take the feel off Caitlin Clark, she's just a point guard who can't go right, can't shoot going right, can't attack going left, and doesn't have the greatest handle in the world, and can't shoot a midi. If you want to turn her into Paige Bueckers, just sit her on the bench, genuinely. But it's a scary thing, and this kind of sums it up even more. I think the Indiana Fever don't want to piss off Caitlin, but they misled her. I don't think Caitlin Clark plays more than 4 years in Indiana. I don't think she's going to request a trade next year. I think she's going to be happy playing with Leah Boston. I think she's going to play 1 more year with Steph White. And it's going to be another year of, does Steph White want Caitlin Clark? What's this style of play? Why are the Fever playing so boring? I genuinely don't think we see Caitlin Clark play more than 4 years in Indiana. I think she's going to ask out after 4 years. Because I think this organization will go with Stephanie White over Indiana. I think they will, or over Caitlin Clark. I think they will make that choice. I don't think she's going to cause it in public. I don't think she's going to tank the locker room. I think she's going to be the perfect teammate. But I don't think she lasts 4 years in this organization. But anyway, I'll see you guys.